So, Sophie posted this video of her in red having a moment on the court.
Think you're someone new.
So there's this moment that just happened. Sophie Cunningham drops a throwback photo wearing fever red, and Caitlin Clark comes back with 3 simple words. It's time to run it back. Nothing complicated about that. But then Sophie fires back with only if you cuddle and make me dinner twice a week. Now, before we dive into what this really signals for the Fever's roster moves, we've got to break down why this casual back and forth has turned into a major business calculation for Indiana's management. Because there's a whole situation unfolding behind closed doors that could end up costing the Fever one of their key pieces. And it's got absolutely nothing to do with performance between the lines.
Right? Been a while since we just talked straight Fever action, but free agency is leaving a lot of questions. Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, Chloe Bibby probably won't be on this team, although I wish we could figure out how to get Red back on the team. Yeah, I would appreciate that. As always, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you check to see if you're still subscribed. YouTube is still unsubscribing.
Free agency remains completely stalled. These CBA talks have been grinding on for over 2 months now, with zero breakthrough in sight. Sure, we know the season's expanding to somewhere between 50 and 54 games from last year's 40. But here's the part everyone's missing: the expansion draft mechanics. Indiana's going to have to shield their cornerstone players from both Portland and Toronto. Standard expansion draft protection typically covers 5, maybe 6 players maximum. That's the limit. Clark, Boston, Hall, Smith are locked in. 4 slots filled, which leaves the Fever staring at maybe 1 or 2 protection spots for their entire remaining roster. This is where everything gets messy, because both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham are unrestricted free agents who've gone on record saying they want to come back to Indianapolis.
Many Indiana Fever fans want nothing more than for their team to bring Sophie Cunningham back in free agency this winter, whenever the WNBA league office and its players agree to a new CBA. Of course, Cunningham isn't the only member of the Indiana 2025 team that fans are clamoring to bring back, as Kelsey Mitchell is just as beloved among the fan base.
Let's get the obvious nonsense out of the way first. That Instagram comment section turned into exactly the circus you'd predict from certain WNBA social media corners. Some genius actually posted, "Has Caitlin Clark ever been unfaithful to her boyfriend Connor?" After seeing teammates joke around. This is what covering this league looks like. 2 players can't have normal friendly banter without part of the fanbase inventing drama that has zero connection to basketball. Caitlin Clark is committed to her relationship. Sophie Cunningham is straight. They're friends and former teammates having fun on social media. End of story. Let's talk basketball.
Sophie trying to scrap. And for some of us, we appreciate that. Where was the rest of y'all? And yeah, y'all all going to keep getting called out until you show that fire. The good news is Indiana doesn't necessarily have to choose when it comes to getting Cunningham or Mitchell. Both players have expressed interest in returning. The Fever's front office will have enough money and flexibility to re-sign them, both if they so desire. Well, here's the problem, and I'm not sure they even...
Here's what actually matters for roster building. Sophie Cunningham ranked as the 2nd most Googled female athlete in all of America during 2024, according to Google's year-end numbers. Not 2nd in the WNBA. 2nd across every female athlete in the entire nation. She's running a podcast through the Volume Network. She's hitting major media appearances consistently. She's cultivated a real fan base that reaches way past basketball. And here's the key detail. She spent exactly 1 season with the Fever. Think about that timeline. 12 months in Indiana, and she became the 2nd most searched female athlete in America. This isn't just about her charisma. This is about the amplification effect that comes with playing next to Caitlin Clark.
But they have to protect her. If they leave her out there to be drafted, just from a pure marketing and business standpoint, if you're a new franchise, you draft her first thing. Because she's one of the few players in this league that's got a fan base. That's all there is to it. Has her own high profile podcast on the Volume. And she's in on marketing opportunities.
But there's something else that never appears in marketing reports or search analytics. Go back and watch last season's footage. When Caitlin Clark took hits, when she got knocked down, when opponents were targeting the league's biggest attraction with cheap shots, who was the only Fever player consistently stepping up physically. Sophie Cunningham. She was the sole teammate willing to actually confront someone and defend Clark in real time, not just discuss it during post-game media sessions. Actually handle it when it mattered. That kind of presence affects things that never show up in box scores. Team chemistry, locker room dynamics, having someone willing to back up your franchise player when games get rough. The Fever had teammates who put up better numbers than Cunningham, but nobody else brought that particular dimension.
Scroll down, and here is this. Has Caitlin Clark ever cheated on her boyfriend Connor? Guys, I'm not justifying hitting that. Wow. Even the fans. I mean, we found this out. The fans of this league, God, they're ate up with agenda. Always got to make something, of course. You see that. They want to make this into a Sophie and Caitlin. They're clowning around with each other.
Let's walk through the expansion draft mathematics, because this is where Indiana's front office faces a calculated gamble. If the Fever resign both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham before the expansion draft hits, they've got to protect both players. That burns 2 of their 5 or 6 protection slots immediately. But consider the flip side. If they leave Sophie exposed, assuming they decide they can't or won't shield her, what's the outcome? Portland and Toronto are constructing entire franchises from zero. They need players who can move tickets and create media buzz right away. Sophie Cunningham delivers on both fronts. She's a solid rotation contributor who brings legitimate star appeal and marketing punch. If she's sitting there in that expansion draft, she's getting picked, guaranteed. First round, quite possibly first overall selection.
I will be very disappointed if Sophie Cunningham is not on this team. I can tell you that right now. I can't remember exactly how many they can protect. I think it's 6. It's 5 or 6. So, Rhodes, you're supposed to know that, really? I mean, no. I've made videos on it. I think it's 5 or 6, but I'm not going to look it up because I just brought it up impromptu. Tell me what you think. Sophie and Caitlin, I feel like have to run it back.
Here's what makes this especially crucial for the Fever strategic planning. This isn't simply about whether Sophie Cunningham outperforms whoever else they might leave vulnerable. This is about grasping the business fundamentals of expansion drafts. New organizations need recognizable faces. They need players who can spark immediate fan excitement and media coverage. They need someone who can hit local radio programs and podcasts and actually pull an audience. Portland and Toronto are joining a league where Caitlin Clark just produced record crowds and television numbers. They're entering a landscape where star power and media visibility carry more weight than ever in WNBA history. Sophie Cunningham embodies exactly the type of commodity expansion franchises chase. The Fever have to balance that reality against their on-court requirements. Kelsey Mitchell put up 17 points per game last season and has been the team's most reliable scorer for multiple years. She's the clear priority. But if Indiana can only shield one of their unrestricted free agents, the basketball choice and the business choice might pull in opposite directions. Mitchell is the superior player. Cunningham might represent the bigger loss if she lands in Portland or Toronto, because she delivers elements that are tougher to find in free agency or through the draft. And then you've got the Caitlin Clark element. That Instagram interaction wasn't just casual friendship. It was a public message. Clark wants Sophie returned. She's made that obvious. Franchise player preferences carry weight. When your generational talent tells you she wants a specific teammate back, you listen not just to keep your star satisfied, but because she's recognizing something about team chemistry and compatibility that might not be apparent from the outside. Examine Sophie's influence beyond the statistics from last season. The Fever transformed from a broken lottery team into a playoff squad. Part of that was Clark's entrance. Part was Aaliyah Boston's growth. But part was also bringing in veterans like Cunningham who knew how to function alongside a ball-dominant guard without needing to be the focal point. She absorbed contact. She knocked down open threes. She defended with intensity. She provided energy from the bench. Those are precisely the traits you want surrounding a young superstar. The timing creates pressure here too. Free agency cannot begin until the CBA gets finalized. CBA talks are deadlocked over revenue distribution and salary cap framework. Nobody knows when that resolves. Maybe next week, maybe next month. But whenever it happens, there will be a compressed free agency window, followed directly by expansion draft preparation. The Fever cannot afford to wait and see how the market unfolds. They need to decide quickly about who they're emphasizing and who they're prepared to risk losing. Here's another dimension that gets overlooked. What if Sophie ends up in Portland or Toronto and develops into a legitimate star on her own terms? She's 28 years old, hitting her peak, with demonstrated ability to generate media coverage and fan connection. Place her in a featured position on an expansion team building an identity from scratch, and she could absolutely emerge. Maybe not as a first-team all-WNBA selection, but as a fan favorite who moves merchandise and fills seats. That has real value, and if the Fever let her leave for nothing, or worse lose her in the expansion draft because they failed to protect her, that's a missed chance that could sting for years. The opposing argument is direct. The Fever cannot construct their roster around feelings and social media metrics. They need to focus on winning games. Kelsey Mitchell is a more effective scorer. Lexi Hall demonstrated genuine progress last season. Katie Lou Samuelson can shoot consistently. Erica Wheeler provides veteran guidance. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of those contributors, maybe that's the wrong call. Basketball decisions should stem from basketball worth, not Instagram engagement and podcast downloads, but here's the reality of contemporary professional sport. The boundary between basketball value and entertainment value is more blurred than it has ever been. The WNBA just secured a media deal worth $200 million annually, up from $50 million. That jump wasn't powered by competitive parity or playoff excitement. It was powered by Caitlin Clark creating record viewership and unprecedented mainstream coverage. The league is finally receiving compensation based on its entertainment worth, not just its competitive quality. In that context, a player like Sophie Cunningham, who brings authentic media presence and fan appeal, holds more value than conventional analysis indicates. So where does this put the Fever? They're confronting a choice that every front office despises, selecting between solid options with no obvious correct answer. Sign both Mitchell and Cunningham. Protect them both, and risk sacrificing someone else valuable in the expansion. Focus on Mitchell, let Sophie explore free agency, and hope she either returns or avoids getting selected by Portland or Toronto. Or make the bold move and secure Sophie specifically because of her off-court impact and her connection with Clark. Even if that means making a tough choice elsewhere on the roster. What we know without question is this. Caitlin Clark wants Sophie Cunningham back. The fan base wants Sophie retained. Sophie wants to stay in Indianapolis. The question becomes whether the front office values what she contributes enough to make it work. And if they don't, if they let her explore other options, or leave her unprotected and she ends up in Portland or Toronto, they better be confident about whoever they selected instead. Because if Sophie Cunningham becomes a crowd favorite in another market while the Fever are explaining why they couldn't keep her, that creates a public relations disaster that lingers for seasons. The CBA will eventually get resolved. Free agency will launch. The expansion draft will occur. And when it does, we're going to discover exactly how the Indiana Fever weighs the mix of on-court output, off-court appeal, team chemistry, and franchise player input. Sophie Cunningham embodies all four elements. The logical prediction says they figure out how to retain her, but in a league where business choices don't always match common sense, nothing's certain until signatures hit paper. So what's your take on what the Fever should do? Shield Sophie and risk losing another contributor? Let her test free agency and cross their fingers? Or is this entire conversation blown out of proportion because she's just a supporting player who got magnified by sharing the court with Caitlin Clark? Share your thoughts in the comments because this choice is going to shape Indiana's entire offseason, regardless of how it plays out.